Most of you being athletes, how good are you at managing what goes into your body? Whether you're an athlete or not, it's good to know what you eat, or if anything, at least know about it. Today there's a lot of controversy between grass-finished and grain-finished beef, and which is better for you. Personally, I grew up on a cow-calf operation of around 300 pairs, and I've visited numerous cattle operations across the country, some of them being including feed yards. So today I will tell you about grass-finished beef, grain-finished beef, and the difference in how they affect the world. So, grass-fed. It's on the PowerPoint. Between the two, most people think that this is the healthier, better beef. Why? Well, according to Tamar Haspel, it's because of omega-3 fats. It states that USDA took a sample of 100-gram serving of grass-fed tarp sirloin, and it found that it contained 68 milligrams of omega-3 fats, which means only 22 milligrams more than that for regular beef, still far below levels of low-fat fish. So it's saying, even though it's better than grain, has more omega-3 fats than grain-finished beef, it's still not very high in its own right, and so it kind of makes the argument irrelevant. But rewinding back a little bit, what makes grass-fed grass-fed? Well, it is what it sounds like. It's cattle that's been fed grass their whole life and haven't touched anything other than grass. But if they have ever touched grain or consumed any, they are then considered grain-fed from there on out, which brings me to my next point. It's called grain-fed cattle. Now, to me, feed yards are probably one of the most impressive parts of the cattle industry. Last November, I took a tour with Farm Bureau, and we visited places around Dodge City, and a feed yard was one of the locations that we went to. And this feed yard in particular had over 50,000 head of feeder calves. And all these facilities were just really neat to look around and learn about. Probably had about an over multi-million-dollar facilities that they ran. And one of the issues that many people get confused on and think that is a problem with grain-fed cattle is like having that much cattle in one spot makes the feed yards muddy and crowded. But this feed yard didn't really have that issue, or any of the other feed yards that I've seen in my time. And according to Temple Grandin, a feed yard should have a 2 to 3% slope to keep it dry. And that was the case for this feed yard and all the other feed yards that I have seen in my time. But one question that people get confused on, well, how does growing a feed yard, how does that make them grow faster and more efficiently? Well, according to Chris Gunners, the bovine are rapidly fattened up with grain-fed feeds usually made with base of soy or corn. That's true. Many people think that along with feed yards that they use antibiotics and hormones, and they think that it's actually in the meat whenever they buy it in the stores and consume it. But FDA requires an 80-day withdrawal period, so that gives cattle a minimum of 80 days before they can be sold or marketed and sold to consumers, so that way it's out of their system completely. What people also don't realize is grass-fed may also contain antibiotics, but they're also required an 80-day withdrawal period. So then, this brings me to my final point, is the difference. Now, can anyone tell the difference in grass-fed versus grain-fed beef whenever they consume it? Well, if you can, great, but comparing a cut side by side, you can really decisively tell the difference between grain-fed and grass-fed beef. Grass-fed, right here, has a lot more marbling in it, and so marbling means it has more flavor. And or compared to grass-fed, where it does not hardly have any marbling inside of it. And another thing that you can't see it, but we talked about how grass-fed beef has a little bit more amount of omega-3 fats in it, but people don't know is that also grain-fed beef contains a lot more oleic acid. Roughly on average about 8 grams per pound of beef, You know what oleic acid does? It decreases the LDL cholesterol and increases your HDL cholesterol, so it increases the good cholesterol and decreases the bad cholesterol, according to Stephen Smith. Something else, the grass-fed beef is, people wonder why it's more expensive. They ask why. It's not because it's higher quality, as you can see, but it's because it just takes longer to grow and more land. So it requires more land and labor to require grass-fed beef. As you need more land to produce more grass so that they can eat, and it actually takes them longer. It takes on average a longer 235 more days to reach their slaughter weight than it does grain-fed beef. And on average, when the grass-fed beef reaches their slaughter weight, they're around 1,070 pounds, whereas grain-fed beef is around 1,200 pounds on average. And so that may not sound like a lot, but when you do the math on here, on annual, let's say we took the feed yard that I visited in Dodge City, we took all those cattle and sent them to harvest, we would produce 60 million pounds of beef. Whereas if that was all grass-fed beef, it would be 53,500,000. That's when you subtract the totals, you get a difference of 6,500,000 pounds difference, which is quite a big difference for just one operation. Now, this brings me to my conclusion. So, I don't know about you, but I prefer grain-fed beef. It's flavorful, it's cheaper, and it's arguably just as healthy. For the thought that I'd like to leave you with is that by 2050, our population is expected to grow by 38%. We're supposed to have 9 to 11 billion people across the world. So, tell me, do you think it'd be better if we fed that population with a slower growing, more expensive grass-fed beef, or a faster growing, more efficiently growing beef? Because everyone's still going to want their beef. Just think about that.